Hello, everyone. So we're going to get straight into this. Now, why don't we start just with some context around your role? So you've got a very unique role as Regional Deputy CEO and also Chief People Officer. I know that EY really, I guess if you boil it down, is in the business of selling smart brains. How does what you do enable that?
Thanks, Sean. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, it is probably a little bit of an unusual role. So I've been the Deputy CEO of EY. So we have about just under 9,000 people in EY Oceania. So it's Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea and Fiji. 400,000 globally. And I've been the Deputy CEO. This is my 5th year. Prior to this last year, I was the head of clients and industry. So I had responsibility for all of our go-to-market strategy, the growth of our business, all of our client service, all of that. And then last year took on the role of Chief People Officer. The reason for that is, that in professional services, which is what we do, the two most important things in our business are our clients and our people. And I ran clients for a long time. And for me, it made sense that I would then run people. In fact, people is actually the craft of what I did before that anyway. And I think my CEO totally felt very strongly that it's an incredibly important message to send out there to say, we think that's so important in our business, our clients and our people, that our Deputy CEO would run that. So I think it's something that, I think is great credit to him, that he put that portfolio together. Now, you said something about we sell smart brains and how do I enable that? Thank you. I think we do. I think we do that. But I think my job is to enable a smart system that allows those smart brains and the humans attached to those smart brains to do the very best that they can. So what in the system allows for really great decision making? What in our system allows for work to be designed well and sustainably? How do we give and receive feedback safely? How do we create the conditions for people to thrive and bring their best selves to work? So I think of myself as the creator or the influencer of a system that allows those smart brains to do what they need to do.
I love that because people can really only achieve what the system allows them to do, right? And I think the other interesting part of that is, I guess in your experience, is that the customer experience or the client experience is obviously a product of the employee experience. So makes such great synergies, obviously, with the two roles. So you've all seen, I guess, the title of this session. Now, you've been at the forefront of navigating quite a tough time around cultural transformation. Can you set the scene for us just in terms of what brought that about and what was the catalyst for EY's independent culture review?
Sure. So we had the tragic death of one of our colleagues in our Sydney office several years ago, so 2022. A really shocking and saddening incident that happened, and I think a lot of people in the room would be aware of that incident. If I'm honest, one of the things that shocked us on top of the shock of losing someone was the reverberations in our business, far and wide. So we underestimated just how many people were deeply, deeply impacted. If it was, the incident happened in Sydney, but someone in Perth, a manager of a different line of business, different rank, different nationality, was deeply wounded and said, how come nobody contacted me about that thing? And that really gave us pause, that we had underestimated how those reverberations, and it made us think, what don't we know? What don't we understand here? Have we really understood the cumulative impacts of COVID on our people? Have we understood loss and grief in their life? Have we understood whether or not we do have the conditions of psych safety in our business? Have we understood what is happening in their lived experience? So we decided to take that moment, which was awful and tough, and certainly there's a lot of media about it, but to take that as a moment of real learning. So we commissioned this, as you've said, an independent review. We got Elizabeth Broderick and Co. to do a review. And at the time of commissioning that, we said we will make that fully public when that comes out and share it with everybody. We didn't realise it would take a year, and the reason it took that long was because so many people wanted to keep talking and coming through, and we said, yep, absolutely, if you want to be involved, you be involved. So kept going. A year later, the world for professional services fundamentally changed, and I won't go into it, but I do think that people will be aware of that. And so the pylon that was happening in our industry was quite extraordinary. So you can only imagine what it would feel like to then release a review about your culture in what was an extraordinary time of just anything that could be used against you was going to be. And we were voluntarily taking that on, and there is no space for nuance and explanation in that environment. So imagine facing your partners, or we had 900 of them at the time, saying, we're doing this. And so that was definitely a white knuckle moment, to be honest, to hold with that. But that was the reason and the catalyst.
That sounds like a lot, right, to go through. And you can just imagine too, I think, for employees being, experiencing that as well, right, when they have to go home and have those barbecue conversations,
Exactly.
right, around why they choose to go to work. Now, where did you start, right, when you think about the size of that? Where did you start, and what have you learned from that?
So the review actually handed to us 27 recommendations and 5 experiments to do. So our tendency, and we're professional services, smart brains, we like to get in there and solve things. So counterintuitively for us, we didn't start by getting in there and solving things, much at the direction and credit to Liz Broderick, who said, do not rush to solve this right now. So where did we start? We started with more listening and extensive listening. And we made ourselves sit in the mess and the discomfort of hearing the stories of our people. We wanted to be able to solve things, but actually the act of listening in itself is an important action. We had lots of people who took our review, took the recommendations and did their own checklists, and that's fine too, but I think they were missing a point. You have to hear the stories of your own people to understand what that's like. And I think there was great learning, awareness, understanding, relief in the action of listening. The second thing we did, I'd say, was made sure that we started with the hygiene. You can do lots of sophisticated, sexy things, but if you don't have the safety protocols in place, independent channels for people to raise things, making sure that there's no retaliation if someone does something, like all of those things needed to be absolutely sorted before you could work through the hierarchy of other things. And the third thing we did was talk to our clients about it. They knew. They were reading papers. They were seeing all of that. And as much as it was uncomfortable for our partners and for us to equip our staff and partners to be able to speak to clients, and as you say, people having barbecue conversations about all this, sit down and talk to them about it, be transparent. And my learning from that is, my God, we were not alone. And our they were unbelievable. They were so supportive. And they said, we've got teams too, that we're worried this is happening in our yard. And our teams are working with your teams are working with our teams. Are we the ones contributing to this because of our deadlines? Yes, and yes. Like all of those things are true. But I think the understanding of the universality of that, the commonality of it was just so, it gave us a whole lot of momentum and conviction. Our partners who were like this started to go, started to feel a bit of pride about that. I mean, that pride didn't last that long, but certainly in the beginning, it was a really reassuring learning.
I think that just reminded me of Claire's talk as well, how she talked this morning about conversations being such an important skill for leaders as well. And I think often we think about conversations more from a talking point of view versus from a listening point of view, don't we? So you didn't rush into the design, but when you did get there, what were some of the principles, I guess, that you applied in executing that and coming up with a solution?
I don't know whether we named them principles, but I'd say in hindsight, looking back, I mean, we definitely knew that it needed to start from the top and at the top. So, and one of the recommendations was to make sure that you did a statement of commitment, but we put a lot of work into all of our senior leaders, so all of our executive leadership team, our office managing partners, the big sort of leaders. We architected a statement of commitment that we really wanted to be able to hand on heart. We spliced a video together that had all of us reciting this. It's played in every single office, every single day for months and months. We did roadshows. This is what we stand in front of you. We eyeballed our staff and said, we commit to you. We absolutely commit to you on that. So I think setting that tone from the top. One of the things that our review told us was that EY is a phenomenal place in the main. Most of us have an extraordinarily good time, but not everybody, not for those in the margins. So I guess one of the things that we learnt is you must design for the margins. And when you do that, it'll suit the main. But if you design for the main, you're not picking up the people in the margins. So that's another one for me that was a real learning. And that I think I would say that we learnt a lot about accountability. And so the first moves you make are pretty telling signals. And you have to be prepared to take action on the things that, there'll be things in your organisation that people go, oh, I'm not surprised about that. They might not have come forward, but if you go, no, can't say I'm overly, there's something there. And I think we made some pretty significant, very symbolic, real moves that gave the message that said, we are mucking around here. No one is safe from those, absolved of those things. This is the standard that we hold ourselves to. And then we kept driving accountability. And I will say that accountability doesn't just mean exiting people. Accountability might be things like more training. You didn't get that promotion because it's sending a message that we don't believe in, or financial penalties, or you would do something more to give back. So driving accountability at all levels.
Just a bit on that, a couple of questions. So when you talk about designing for the margins, what might be an example of that?
I think we have a whole lot of programs that we were not aware of the cultural sensitivities in language that we had. We were not aware of the ways in which we would invite people that would not include them because of accessibility issues, culturally divergent issues. We did a lot of work to understand where there were genuine differences for culturally and linguistically diverse people because of whether it was, language was an impediment, or we had our own unconscious biases around selection processes. So all of that, we started to put a different filter on the way we looked at which our systems and processes were. And they informed us.
And that's, I guess, that concept of universal design, right? Like if you design for the edges, you sort of actually end up with something that's better for everybody.
That's right.
I think one of my favourite sayings around this sort of stuff is like you can't, even when it comes in the context of wellbeing, it's not an inclusive wellbeing program if it's the same for everybody, right? Just one more on accountability. I think what came up for me there too was just about deciding who's responsible for what. I thought it was quite interesting that you saw that in order for people to take the responsibility you wanted them to, you actually needed to invest in actually people understanding, I guess, or training them, right? Because then you could ask for that. Was that a conscious sort of part of the thinking process too?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny about the journey of accountability. So we're in year 3 now, and it's funny because, I told you I came into the role a year and a half ago, and there was a lot of people sort of going, where are we at with that culture program? How's that going? Are we done yet? And the piece around, we're never going to be done. It's a dynamic organisation. Anyone leaves, anyone goes. You have good days, you have bad days. It's never going to be done. So let's just start there. And secondly, this is not on me. It's not for me or my project management office to be solving. What are you doing? Tell me something that you did today that made our workplace more safe, sustainable and inclusive. So, and it's different because then they sort of unlock their arms and go, okay. So just kind of putting back that ownership, because we all own our culture, and the things that were affecting our people were very often the small things, the loneliness of walking into a lift and not feeling that anyone would look at you in the eyes, and because they're all busy with their day. Like those small things matter. So I think, yes, we did very big things from the top, and accountability on, and you think about your business lines and how they're cut and who owns the money and who owns the power and where is the capital going. All of that is true. And the things, those micro things that all of us can do make a difference. And I think once you understood that, once our people understood that they have not just accountability but agency to make a difference here, I think things started to really shift.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's almost like those little moments of connection, right, that actually help people feel seen, feel valued. Yeah, I love it. So how did you track your progress on this? Obviously, there's a big investment over a number of years. How do you know that you're on the right track, or that, I mean, you sort of just said the job's never done, but what is it that you sort of use to actually measure your success?
So initially when we started this, we did the things that you would imagine. Set a program office up and you had your your dashboard that sort of says 27 recommendations, 5 experiments, here we are, we've done 5 of them, we've done 7 of them, we've done 10 of them, a report. But I guess when people were starting to say, I don't know if it feels that different. Does it feel different? Have we fixed this thing? There's a few realizations that there's a difference between completion on a dashboard versus impact. And we realised probably about a year into it that we were running the risk of implementing all 27 plus 5 and not having moved the needle on anything. And we needed to kind of take a step back actually and ask ourselves, have we really gotten to the root cause? Is this a lot of busy stuff that we're doing? And it's important stuff, don't get me wrong. All of those things, every single one of those things was important. But is it really the needle movers? And as a for instance of where it wasn't. Like, so if I looked at cases that were coming through on, our employee relations cases, I could see that the vast majority of cases that were coming through came about as a result of an avoided conversation. Back to your point about conversations. It was someone not saying to someone, hey, I don't think we quite hit it out of the park on that particular thing. And because when you work in my game, we work from project to project. So you can easily just change the person you're working with or the team that you've assembled. It's easy to avoid it. It's not like in a corporate where you have the same people with you all the time. And so when someone hasn't been given that, had that conversation, they just suddenly don't get staffed onto the next job. And they don't know why. So then they feel excluded. And then they raise it that they feel excluded. And they're right. They have been excluded. But because someone didn't want to have that conversation, either they didn't want to upset them or they didn't have the time because they've got something else going on. But that's what's happening. So maybe the root cause is actually we don't have a safe feedback culture. We don't give and receive feedback well or timely. So that's actually one of the root cause areas. So that was... Then we built that into a root cause kind of thing, and then we built an impact dashboard. And there are 4 areas that we knew that and that was the other thing, we weren't even really quite sure what we were trying to solve because this report was so big. And we broke it down to 4 main areas. It was inclusion and psych safety, long working hours, harmful behaviours and leadership. And we built an impact dashboard against the 4, and we articulated this is what great looks like. We're never going to be perfect because as long as we have human beings, we make mistakes. But what's important is that we've got the safety nets in place. And when someone falls down, have we created safety for people to speak up? Have we acted upon it? And so then the impact dashboard measures those 4 things, and it's a combination of operational and sentiment data, and it's now built into the way that we operate. So it's in our normal measurement. It's become part of the infrastructure and the scaffolding of our business. And then we've also got culture ambassadors who sit in our business so that we've got a pulse check all the time on the ground. What's happening? Did that work? Did that resonate? What's everyone else doing on the ground? How can we feed back into the system?
And that must be quite difficult. As you said, you got 900 partners.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we've got 700 now. But
700. I guess in keeping that consistency as well, like how did you, I guess, was there a way that you, I guess, use the dashboards, I guess, to help each of the partners actually almost have a sense of FOMO or something like that in terms of like competing against each other? What was the sort of healthy way to do that?
The healthy way to do it is to get granular, to be honest, because if you think about we've got 9,000 people, so your pulse, your engagement survey results can feel very aggregated, and people can actually sort of say, I don't know how to influence that. I don't know how to make a difference in that. So it's all very granular now, and you can click it by which geography you're in, what part of the business, what rank, whatever. So you can see where your problem areas are. The other thing that I should have mentioned about the dashboard, coming back to my point about design for the margins, not the main, in our dashboard we have built a self-penalising system in there, and we compare the results of people who identify as culturally similar to those who identify as culturally different on those 4 dimensions. And where there is a difference between the experiences of those 2 groups, we double penalty because we haven't done that. We haven't been inclusive. There is a difference there. Remember I said there's operational and sentiment data. They might feel like they're being treated differently. I can see it in the operations. I can see it in promotion rates. I can see it in turnover data. So there's something very real. So we get granular. So it's not about FOMO or competition. It's about data, actually. They've got it there. These people aren't making it up. It's real. What are we going to do?
when you've seen the truth, I guess, represented, right? Like you can't argue with it. So when you think about the theme of the summit, which is about this power behind performance, what advice would you give to everybody here in the audience about, I guess, positioning what they do each day as a strategic enabler of business performance?
I think the answer is in your question, to position it as a strategic enabler of the business. The last thing you want is to have it sitting over on the side. It's the first thing that'll get cut. I think the previous conversation about the influencing skills, it needs to be nested in your business strategy. It needs to be directly linked. I think today's been all about measurement, a lot of conversation about that, but it must, this is, if our business is out for driving particular growth, this is the energy wiring of the business. There's no way we can deliver on those things unless we have this right. So I think advice-wise is to make sure it's absolutely inextricably linked with business strategy. We've talked about, I think, a lot today on measurement. The thing that I would add that maybe has been one of my other learnings is when it starts to feel tough, when there starts to be this kind of a little bit of a pull, resistance that you're getting, and I have got it on a couple of areas, I keep following it because I think that they're starting to get real. You're starting to get to the real point. So in my game, time is a very precious commodity. You're charging your time. I wanted to bring in a time off in lieu system across the whole business. We have it in parts of our business, but no one's done it in our game across the whole business. The amount of pushback I got on it was extraordinary, which made me realise this is the canary in the coal mine. I'm starting to get very real now. Let's unpack why you're getting uncomfortable. Tell me why not. Tell me why you can't do it. Maybe the deputy CEO hat was very helpful in this situation. But we pushed, and it started to surface some of those other things, or how are we going to be competitive in the market and how are we going to do it. But you had to get very, very real because I'm like, this is a false economy. If we're burning out our people, what is the point of this whole thing? We've got to bring relief into the system. So I'd say if you are finding some things like that you're tugging on, maybe keep tugging because it's probably giving you an indicator that you're playing in a real space.
Good advice. I've got one more question for Janelle, and then I thought I might send it out to the audience to see if we've got any questions. So just giving you a little of a heads up. This one's a bit more of a personal takeaway here, because I'm sure that going through this, you probably learned a lot about yourself as well. So in those tougher moments when you were going through this, or whether it was pushback or even just, I guess, dealing with that gravity of the situation, what was it within you that got you through it and that we might apply to ourselves too when we're dealing with tough situations?
I think, I don't know about what's within me, but some of the things that got me through is one is just to keep reminding myself of the why. Like the why behind, all the things I outlined to you was a very real why for us. It was, and my CEO is, whenever it would get the media scrutiny or whatever would get really high, we would just talk to each other and we'd say, but it's the right thing to do. Like no matter which way you look at it, and yes, we're in a, we could really do without that column being written, and we could really do without having to explain ourselves in a Senate inquiry and all those sorts of things. The reality is it's the right thing to do. So we kept that as a bit of our North Compass or North Star in that. The second thing is celebrate the wins, because it can feel like you're getting nowhere, to be honest, because for as many things as you get right, there'll be something that happens or someone that does something, you're like, oh. And so there were really important wins in here. And we did something called, I said I'd talk to our staff about, well, what are you doing? So we initiated a program called the 1% Unlock, with the whole thing was, we can all make a difference here. This is not the responsibility of the boss or the PMO, it's all of us. What's the 1% that you can unlock that makes a difference? And every single week in my newsletter, I would share, so I'd do interviews with people, I'd share stories. My comms person is at the back who's helped me write this for over a year. What's your 1% unlock? And we'd hear these incredible stories of, one team member who went to the ATO and said, I'm going to aggregate the submissions for the tax deadline, which means all of our team can breathe over the weekend. We don't have to work 40. And the win that caused for the team, and then I'd share that at a town hall, then the FOMO would kick in. I want my 1% unlock to make the newsletter. So that becomes like I was buoyed by those stories, and I loved being the person that would then plant that story into another office, and they'd come up with their story. Can you tell Brisbane that we did this? So that was really cool. And then the third thing, and this is something that's from my past probably that helps me through, is in a life prior to professional services, I was a former psychologist, and I used to work in prisons. And one of the things that in working with inmates was there were very few that I found that were desperately bad people. Often they were people who'd made bad choices at bad points in time, didn't have the right resources. From there, I always felt that there aren't that many people who, I mean, certainly in the workplace, and I'll bring it into the world where we're more familiar with, you know, people don't wake up in the morning to do a bad job. They don't wake up and go, I'm going to really, really tank today. I'm going to make people's lives miserable. I'm going to hurt as many people as possible. I'm going to let down everybody. They don't do that, but that happens. So if you believe it to be true that people don't wake up to do a bad job, then it must mean that for the most part, they're falling short because expectations weren't clear, they didn't have time, they've got something else going on in their life, they made a bad decision, and so if that's true, then I can keep going with creating the conditions that give them the support and the tools. If you wake up thinking everyone's a bit, that way, I think it would be hard. But I don't think like that. And I think when you come at it constructively, to how can we create the smart system to allow people to be their absolute best, to thrive and to shine, then I think it keep going.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the reasons I call myself a chief energist, is because I train energist leaders, essentially, that expand their energy and the energy of others, because I think that's what they all want to be. Like, they don't want to be energy vampires, like you're sort of talking about. So that was a much longer answer than I anticipated, but we've still got but a good one, a very good one. So we've got a minute left, and I just thought it's such an extraordinary opportunity to have someone like Janelle here today. Do we have a very profound question I'm going to ask from there that might become from the audience?
Very hard to, thanks for the question, Greg. Very hard to say, that wasn't the catalyst for me getting to where I am, by the way, just to be clear. Very hard to say where we'd be. We've always been the kind of organisation, I truly believe this, that is humble in its view that we can always be better. So there are many examples that I would point to of things that have happened that we have addressed differently, in my opinion, because we strive to be better. And so I don't like that incident happened at all, and I'd much rather that it hadn't. And there would be other things that we would probably point to that looks at how can we develop and improve ourselves. I guess we'll never know, but I feel very confident that it's because of the kind of organisation that we are that we went down that path in the first place, and it would have been other things that we would have done to improve. Maybe not as visible, not as as public and as harrowing, maybe. But I'd like to think we are always growing and learning.
Great stuff. I think the last point I want to make, I think what you've done today really is truly illustrate that what culture is really those stories, right? That every single person actually contributes to creating those stories in the organisation. So thank you. Please give me a hand and join me in thanking Janelle. Thank you very much.